Tragedy Girls kind of came about because we essentially were brought on to think of maybe new ideas for this existing script, and it was it was okay. Like it was called Tragedy Girls, and it was, I don't know, I want to say maybe 15 years late to the party. It kind of had very much like a neo slasher vibe, which I grew up with and love. But that said, nobody was really making slasher movies at the time. And so we were trying to think of why is that? And then that fact is that we've seen all of them. And so we're starting to see kind of interesting things, like maybe Final Girls was kind of coming out. And so we were starting to think of how do we kind of take those expectations that people are coming in with and kind of messing with them as much as we can. And so we started just chatting, and we kind of sort of backed our way into the opening scene, and then ended up kind of telling the story more or less from the young women who are usually victims in a horror movie, and kind of making them the perpetrators. And then once we kind of switched that point of view, we're trying to figure out how far we could take this, and it opened up a lot of different narrative opportunities, and we got to play with a lot of different themes we've been dancing around about, how we associate with media and how media disassociates us from violence, and kind of it opened up a lot of things that just kind of fit. And then once you put that in kind of more of a high school setting, then we were able to pull in kind of some DNA from Jawbreaker and Heathers and kind of those teen girl movies with teeth, and kind of make something that was felt a little bit more unique.
So they came to you because of Patra, because of your sterling work on that. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, exactly. It was, they wanted to do a female-driven ensemble horror comedy, and so Patchwork was that as well. And they were just kind of, I think they just liked the first cut of the movie, and I had some kind of friends that were working in development over there, and they kind of took a chance on it.
Right. I mean, did it take a while to get the script? Okay, this is all very well, you're sitting around doing this, but you obviously had to get it into some sort of major shape.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first draft was had a couple other loose ends. It was more about them kind of forcing somebody else to do kind of the main kind of horror slasher work of it, and that was fun, kind of games. But we thought it would be better if they were kind of more hands-on, and so there was a couple set pieces that we had to completely reconstruct, and. So that was kind of interesting, because the one that's Craig Robinson's kind of big set piece was completely redone, and opened up kind of, I think, a lot of new opportunities once we there was a little bit of work, but generally we did something kind of smart early on, where we once the script was kind of in shape, we did a table read of it, where we got kind of two actresses who I've worked with before to kind of come in and do a table read, so you can feel the dialogue, and you can feel the rhythm of the movie, and you can and then so that way the executive producer could kind of see oh, well, that's what it is, and it helped them get the tone of it, rather than kind of reading it themselves and maybe misinterpreting a little bit.
Well, I mean, Alexandra and Brianna are absolutely fantastic, and I mean, how did you get those? You must have really, lucked out. I mean, what was in it for them, essentially?
Well, I mean, 100% lucked out. They did a really great job. They worked together very well, but they're obviously two actresses that are kind of up and coming, and so we had a little bit of when you're financing an indie movie, there's a little bit of pressure to try and get names that can kind of float the sales portion of your budget, but thankfully for us, there's it's not a huge list of kind of women who are in that age range that can play high school, who can finance a film. In fact, there's not very many at all. So once you kind of strike those people off your list, you're left with a wealth of very capable performers who are not expected to really bring the financing, but you can get some really great people. And so Brianna and Alex had both been in kind of bigger properties, so they're kind of on that list and they're on people's radar. And I gotten a recommendation from my friend Seth, who produced a movie called First Girl I Loved, which won the Audience Award at Sundance, and that was Brianna's first movie. And her second movie was Deadpool, and then her third movie was our movie. So it was just kind of a lucky rabbit's foot a little bit, in terms of she tends to obviously pick I think very good projects, and she kind of has when you meet her, she's extremely sharp. And just witty and quite but she's kind of quiet and just very savvy. And so I like the idea of kind of putting her in this kind of she's a planner, and she's very sharp, and you can kind of augment the stuff that she already has going on. Whereas Alex is very much not or is not like a lot of the characters she's played before. She was in Straight Outta Compton, and she was Storm in the new X-Men. and she would play like Aaliyah in like a Lifetime movie. And so she had kind of like a pretty significant body of work for somebody her age, but she often plays people who are very pulled back and kind of reserved, and like these kind of subtle sort of dramatic turns. And when you meet her, she's like a firecracker, like, and she's just has like a ton of energy to her, and I'm just like, why is nobody really like harnessed this? Like, what, it's sort of like, having like a race car and not even, like there's not even getting out of second gear, like it's just, it didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, well, of course she wants to play a part where she has like 90 pages of dialogue, because she can like really, like bring something to it. And they also already knew each other. Like they'd done Marvel press together, and so like, Comic-Con and things like that. And so when I first met with Alex, who I met first, she was like, well, Brianna and I got together, we did a table read, we think this is gonna be really fun. And so then they started kind of, like working together kind of early on, while we were getting the deal done, and kind of started to get behind the project, and that, and like when we were on set, they lived together, like in a house, and even like, throughout the process, like, it's like every once in a while they'd get together and gang up on me, and I'd be like, well, as long as they're working together,
No, you really believe that their friendship. I mean, it is actually really like the chemistry between them is just, really great, electric.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, as a director, it's just one of those things that you kind of pray for, and then every once in a while it works out.
Yeah, sure. And as you say, I mean, the way they deliver the lines and everything, it's just, that's an easy thing for them to do, I'd imagine. And anybody else doing that, it wouldn't actually sound right at all.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is like once we kind of got in rehearsal, we realized, well, okay, well, Sadie's kind of a line, and Michaela's kind of a curve, and and so she's always very precise and quick with the dialogue, and she's more like hopping around and kind of like a hype man. And so once we kind of figured that stuff out with them, just in rehearsal, then we knew exactly who they were.
I mean, the look of it is incredible. I mean, it just looks such a great film. I mean, really, really, super stylish. I loved it the way you did it. I mean, how did you? The cinematographer, everything about it was just so great. Was that important? Obviously.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The look of it was we wanted to go with kind of like a speed and. Like kind of poppy sort of style that kind of sort of is very teenage girl. I was working with the same cinematographer as my first film, Patchwork, and I thought, we'd been doing some interesting things with like transitions from scene to scene, and we wanted to kind of carry that style over into Tragedy Girls, obviously. And so we had a lot of those sorts of conversations, kind of like, with trying to use like aggressive camera work and kind of trying to keep the pace up, and then at the same time you need to create these kind of horror sub pieces, and therefore you need to slow things down and just be constantly in control of like where you are and why. And so there wasn't a lot of like rejigging things in post, just because it was I used to be an editor, and so we tend to kind of plan things out. But we had a great editor on this film, and we all were kind of on the same page during production, because they, like my cinematographer and editor, have worked together before, and so we just had a good kind of shorthand to like, once we kind of decided on this sort of poppy style, we were able to just run with it.
I mean, the references are great too. I think when I emailed you the first time about seeing it, they're all there. From The Purge onwards, really. I mean, it's all, you just wanted to put those in there for the fans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, I wanted to make kind of like a gateway horror movie. Like I wanted to make a horror movie that is for people who are just kind of getting into it, where they can, you don't need to have seen a million horror movies to do it. So like I didn't want to make it for what I consider, who I love. I mean, I'm one of them, is kind of that, like kind of Generation X, like sort of entrenched horror fan, which is the basis of the whole economy of horror and the culture. They're amazing. But I did want to do something that's there's some nuggets in there so they can enjoy the film, but it's more for the people who are that age. It's more for the people who are just getting into it, and it kind of points to other things. So you can go check out Martyrs for the first time, or you can go check out Texas Chainsaw, because you may not have seen it if you're still in high school.